Officer Marcus Rodriguez had been with the city's SWAT team for 8 years. He was known for his sharp instincts and unwavering dedication to protecting citizens. On what seemed like an ordinary Tuesday morning, Marcus received an urgent call that would change his life forever. The dispatcher's voice crackled through his radio as he sat in his patrol car, sipping coffee outside the downtown precinct. All units, we have reports of suspicious activity near the Grand Palace Hotel. Multiple witnesses claim to see armed individuals in unusual uniforms patrolling the area. Possible security threat. Marcus knew the Grand Palace Hotel well. It was the city's most prestigious establishment, often hosting foreign dignitaries, celebrities, and important business meetings. The hotel's towering glass facade and marble entrance had become a symbol of the city's prosperity. Today, however, something felt different about the place. As Marcus drove toward the hotel, he noticed increased traffic and crowds gathering on the sidewalks. People were pointing and taking pictures with their phones. Some looked excited, others appeared concerned. The closer he got to the hotel, the more unusual the scene became. When Marcus arrived at the Grand Palace Hotel, he immediately spotted what had caught everyone's attention. Standing at the main entrance were 4 men dressed in elaborate red and gold uniforms. They wore tall black hats with gold trim and carried ceremonial swords at their sides. Their uniforms looked like something from a movie about ancient kingdoms, complete with decorative buttons and braided cords. The men stood perfectly still, their backs straight and their eyes focused ahead. They looked like professional soldiers, but their uniforms were unlike anything Marcus had seen in his years of police work. These weren't regular security guards, and they certainly weren't local law enforcement. Marcus parked his patrol car and approached the hotel entrance. As a SWAT officer, he was trained to assess potential threats quickly. The presence of armed individuals in unusual uniforms at a major hotel raised immediate red flags. He needed to understand who these people were and why they were here. "Excuse me," Marcus called out to the nearest uniformed man. "I'm Officer Rodriguez with the city police. Can you tell me what's going on here?" The man in the red and gold uniform turned his head slightly, but maintained his rigid posture. His face showed no emotion as he replied in a crisp, formal tone. "We are the Royal Guard of the Kingdom of Aldoria. We are here on official business to protect His Royal Highness Prince Alexander during his visit to your city." Marcus felt his confusion growing. He had never heard of the Kingdom of Aldoria, and no one had informed the police department about any royal visit. In his experience, when foreign dignitaries visited the city, local law enforcement was always notified well in advance. There were protocols to follow, security meetings to attend, and coordination efforts to organize. "I wasn't aware of any royal visit," Marcus said, keeping his voice professional but firm. "Can you show me some identification or documentation about this visit?" The Royal Guard member's expression remained unchanged. "Our credentials have been verified by the appropriate authorities. We are operating under international diplomatic protocols." Marcus realized this situation was becoming more complicated than he had initially thought. He radioed his supervisor, Sergeant Williams, to report what he was seeing. Within minutes, Sergeant Williams arrived at the scene with 2 additional patrol officers. "What do we have here, Rodriguez?" Sergeant Williams asked, studying the uniformed guards with a skeptical expression. "They claim to be protecting a prince from something called the Kingdom of Aldoria," Marcus explained. "But I can't find any record of this country, and we weren't notified about any diplomatic visit." Sergeant Williams walked up to the guards and demanded to see their documentation. The lead guard, a tall man with a perfectly trimmed mustache, produced what appeared to be an official-looking document with elaborate seals and signatures. However, when Sergeant Williams examined it closely, he noticed several inconsistencies. The document was written in English, but it contained grammatical errors that seemed unusual for official diplomatic papers. The seals looked impressive, but they appeared to be printed rather than embossed. Most importantly, there was no verification from the State Department or any other recognized governmental authority. "This doesn't look legitimate," Sergeant Williams whispered to Marcus. "I think we might be dealing with some kind of elaborate hoax or scam." Meanwhile, curious onlookers continued to gather around the hotel entrance. Some tourists were taking selfies with the guards in the background, apparently believing they were witnessing a real royal visit. Local news reporters had also begun to arrive, setting up cameras and interviewing witnesses. The hotel manager, Mr. Peterson, emerged from the building looking flustered and confused. He approached the police officers with obvious concern written across his face. "Officers, I need to speak with you," Mr. Peterson said urgently. "These men showed up this morning claiming they needed to secure the hotel for a royal guest. They presented what looked like official documents and said they had reservations for the entire top floor. But when I tried to verify their story with our corporate office, no one knew anything about it." Marcus and Sergeant Williams exchanged meaningful glances. The situation was clearly not what it appeared to be. The men in the elaborate uniforms might be involved in some kind of sophisticated fraud or confidence scheme. "We need to get to the bottom of this," Marcus said to his supervisor. "If these guys are running some kind of scam, we need to stop it before it goes any further." As the morning progressed, more details began to emerge that made the situation even stranger. Hotel staff reported that the men claiming to be royal guards had requested specific accommodations that seemed unusual for legitimate security personnel. They had asked for access to the hotel's financial records, claiming they needed to verify payment methods for their supposed royal guest. Marcus began to suspect that this elaborate charade might be covering up something much more serious than a simple hoax. The level of preparation and attention to detail suggested that whoever was behind this scheme had invested considerable time and resources into making it appear authentic. The confrontation that was about to unfold between Marcus and the royal guards would reveal truths that no one could have anticipated, setting in motion a chain of events that would surprise everyone involved, including the palace itself. The tension at the Grand Palace Hotel continued to escalate as more law enforcement officers arrived on the scene. Marcus could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders as the situation became increasingly complex. The four men in royal uniforms maintained their professional demeanor, but something in their eyes suggested they were growing nervous. Detective Sarah Chen from the Fraud Investigation Unit joined the growing group of officers. She was known throughout the department for her ability to uncover elaborate schemes and her talent for reading people. After reviewing the questionable documents and observing the guards' behavior, she pulled Marcus aside. "I've seen something like this before," Detective Chen said quietly. "About 3 years ago, we had a case where con artists posed as foreign security personnel to gain access to luxury hotels. They would create elaborate backstories and use fake credentials to convince hotel staff to give them access to guest information and financial systems." Marcus nodded, his suspicions growing stronger. "What was their end game in that case?" "Identity theft and credit card fraud on a massive scale," Detective Chen replied. "They targeted wealthy guests and used their access to the hotel's systems to steal personal information. The operation was worth millions of dollars before we shut it down." As they spoke, Marcus noticed one of the royal guards speaking quietly into what appeared to be a sophisticated radio device. The man's body language had changed from the rigid military posture he had maintained earlier. He now appeared to be receiving instructions from someone, and his responses seemed urgent. Marcus decided it was time to take more direct action. He approached the lead guard, the tall man with the mustache who had shown them the questionable documents earlier. "Sir, I need you and your associates to come with me for further questioning," Marcus said in his most authoritative voice. "We have concerns about the legitimacy of your credentials and your presence here." The lead guard's composure finally began to crack. "Officer, you are making a grave mistake. We are operating under the direct orders of His Royal Highness Prince Alexander of Aldoria. Any interference with our duties could create an international incident." Then you won't mind coming to the station while we verify your story through proper diplomatic channels, Marcus replied firmly. At this point, the second guard, a younger man with blonde hair, stepped forward. His accent was noticeably different from his colleagues, and Marcus detected what sounded like a local accent rather than the foreign inflection the others had been using. "Look, officer," the blonde guard said, "maybe we can work something out here. We don't want any trouble." The lead guard shot his colleague a sharp look that clearly meant he should stop talking immediately. This exchange confirmed Marcus's growing suspicion that these men were not who they claimed to be. Marcus made a quick decision. "I'm placing all 4 of you under arrest for suspicion of fraud and impersonation of foreign officials. You have the right to remain silent." As Marcus began reading them their rights, something unexpected happened. The lead guard reached into his uniform jacket, and for a moment, Marcus tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. However, instead of producing a weapon, the man pulled out a cell phone and quickly dialed a number. "Your Excellency," the guard said into the phone, "we have a situation here. The local authorities are not cooperating with our mission." Marcus was about to confiscate the phone when something remarkable occurred. The person on the other end of the call apparently asked to speak with him directly. The guard extended the phone toward Marcus with the expression that seemed both defeated and relieved. "He wants to speak with you," the guard said simply. Marcus took the phone cautiously. "This is Officer Rodriguez, City Police." The voice on the other end was cultured and spoke with a genuine foreign accent that sounded nothing like the fake accents the guards had been using. "Officer Rodriguez, my name is Ambassador Henrik Larsson. I am the diplomatic representative for the Kingdom of Aldoria in Washington, D.C. I believe there has been a significant misunderstanding." Marcus felt his certainty beginning to waver. The voice on the phone sounded authentic, and the man seemed to have detailed knowledge about the situation at the hotel. "Ambassador, we have 4 individuals here claiming to be royal guards, but their documentation appears questionable, and we weren't notified about any official visit," Marcus explained. "Officer Rodriguez, I must apologize for the confusion. The men you have detained are not actually royal guards. They are private security contractors who were hired to provide protection services. However, they were explicitly instructed not to impersonate official diplomatic personnel." Marcus felt a mix of vindication and confusion. His instincts about the men being fake had been correct, but the situation was apparently more complicated than a simple fraud case. "So there is a real prince visiting the city?" Marcus asked. "Yes, there is. Prince Alexander is indeed in your city on unofficial business. He specifically requested a low-profile visit without official diplomatic protocol. However, these contractors were supposed to provide discreet security without claiming to be official government representatives." The ambassador's explanation began to make sense of some of the contradictions Marcus had observed. The men had looked and acted like professional security personnel, but their documentation and official claims had seemed suspicious. "What I don't understand," Marcus continued, "is why they would risk legal trouble by impersonating official guards if they were legitimately hired for security work." Ambassador Larsson sighed audibly over the phone. "That, Officer Rodriguez, is exactly what concerns me. Their instructions were very clear about maintaining a low profile and avoiding any claims of official status. The fact that they chose to present themselves as royal guards suggests they may have been pursuing their own agenda." Marcus realized that what had started as a straightforward case of suspected fraud had evolved into something much more complex. The security contractors appeared to be legitimate employees, but they had apparently gone beyond their authorized role for reasons that were not yet clear. "Ambassador, I think we need to have a more detailed conversation about this situation. These men were attempting to gain access to hotel financial records and guest information. That goes well beyond normal security duties." "I completely agree, Officer Rodriguez. In fact, I am on my way to your city now to address this situation personally. I should arrive within 2 hours. In the meantime, I would appreciate it if you would continue to detain these individuals until we can determine exactly what they were attempting to accomplish." As Marcus ended the phone call, he looked at the 4 detained men with new understanding. They weren't complete fraudsters, but they also weren't the legitimate officials they had claimed to be. They were something in between. Authorized. Security personnel who had apparently decided to exceed their authority for unknown reasons. The blonde guard who had spoken earlier approached Marcus with a defeated expression. "Officer, we need to tell you something important. The job we were hired for isn't what we were told it would be." The blonde guard's confession opened a door that Marcus hadn't expected. As the detained security contractors were transported to the police station for formal questioning, the real story began to emerge piece by piece. Marcus found himself in the middle of an international intrigue that was far more complex than anyone had initially imagined. At the police station, Marcus and Detective Chen set up separate interrogation rooms for each of the 4 men. The strategy was to question them individually and compare their stories to identify inconsistencies and uncover the truth about their real mission. The blonde guard, who identified himself as Jake Morrison from a security company based in Virginia, was the first to provide detailed information. As Marcus had suspected from his accent, Morrison was indeed an American citizen who had been working in private security for several years. "We were hired 3 weeks ago by a man who said he represented international clients," Morrison explained. "He told us we would be providing discreet security services for a foreign dignitary visiting several American cities. The pay was exceptional, more than twice what we normally earn for this type of work." Detective Chen leaned forward with interest. "What exactly were your instructions?" "Initially, we were told to simply provide a security presence and ensure the client's privacy during his visit. But as the job progressed, our contacts started asking us to gather additional information about the locations we were protecting." Marcus felt his investigative instincts sharpening. "What kind of additional information?" Morrison hesitated before continuing. He wanted detailed floor plans of the buildings, information about security systems, and lists of other guests who might be staying at the same locations. At first, we thought it was just thorough security planning, but eventually it became clear that he was interested in information that went far beyond normal protection duties. The lead guard, who had maintained his official demeanor throughout the morning's events, provided a different perspective when questioned separately. His name was Colonel James Patterson, a retired military officer who had been working in private security for international clients for over a decade. "I want to make it clear that my team and I believed we were engaged in legitimate security work," Patterson stated firmly. "Our client provided credentials that appeared authentic, and he demonstrated detailed knowledge about the prince's travel plans and security requirements." Detective Chen studied Patterson carefully. "But you must have had some doubts when he asked you to impersonate official royal guards." Patterson's expression showed the first signs of uncertainty he had displayed all day. The client explained that the prince preferred his security team to maintain the appearance of official status to discourage unwanted attention from media and curiosity seekers. He said it was a common practice for members of royal families who wanted to travel without the full diplomatic protocol. As the interrogations continued, Marcus began to piece together a picture of an elaborate deception that had fooled experienced security professionals. The mysterious client had apparently invested significant time and resources into creating a convincing cover story that would motivate legitimate security contractors to participate in activities they might otherwise have questioned. Meanwhile, Ambassador Larson arrived at the police station as promised. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, wearing an impeccably tailored suit and carrying the bearing of someone accustomed to diplomatic protocol. His arrival added an official dimension to the investigation that helped clarify some aspects of the case while raising new questions about others. "Officer Rodriguez, I want to thank you for your diligent work in uncovering this situation. Ambassador Larson said as they met in the station's conference room. Your actions may have prevented a serious security breach that could have had international implications. Marcus was intrigued by the ambassador's choice of words. Security breach? Can you explain what you mean by that? Ambassador Larson opened a briefcase and produced several official documents bearing governmental seals and signatures. Prince Alexander is indeed visiting your country, but his trip is far from the casual visit these security contractors were led to believe. He is here for sensitive discussions related to a significant trade agreement between our nations. The ambassador continued. The details of these discussions are confidential, but I can tell you that they involve strategic resources that are of interest to several foreign governments. The prince's location and schedule were supposed to remain completely secret for security reasons. Marcus began to understand the implications of what had been happening at the Grand Palace Hotel. So, someone was using these fake security contractors to gather intelligence about the prince's visit? That is exactly what we suspect, Ambassador Larson confirmed. The request for hotel financial records, guest lists, and detailed floor plans suggests that someone was planning either surveillance or potentially something more dangerous. Detective Chen joined the conversation with new information from the ongoing interrogations. We've made a breakthrough. The third contractor, a man named Rodriguez, no relation to our officer here, has provided us with contact information for the person who hired them. He kept detailed records because he was suspicious about some of the requests. The contact information led to a phone number registered to a shell company that appeared to have connections to several other suspicious organizations. When Detective Chen ran the information through federal databases, she discovered links to a foreign intelligence network that had been under surveillance by federal authorities for several months. This is bigger than we thought, Detective Chen reported. We need to contact the FBI and possibly other federal agencies. This appears to be part of an ongoing espionage operation. Ambassador Larson nodded gravely. I have already been in contact with my government security services. They are coordinating with your federal authorities to investigate the full scope of this operation. As the afternoon progressed, Marcus realized that his routine response to a suspicious activity call had uncovered an international espionage plot. The fake royal guards had been unwitting participants in a scheme designed to gather intelligence about high-level diplomatic meetings that could affect trade relationships between nations. The most surprising revelation came when federal agents arrived at the police station and began coordinating with local law enforcement. Agent Patricia Williams, a senior FBI investigator, brought news that would change everyone's understanding of the situation. The intelligence we've gathered suggests that this operation was specifically designed to test the security response. Capabilities of local law enforcement, Agent Williams explained. The people behind this scheme wanted to see how quickly and effectively American police would respond to suspicious foreign activity. Marcus was stunned by this information. Are you saying this whole thing was some kind of test? In part, yes. But it was also a genuine attempt to gather intelligence about the prince's visit. The operation served multiple purposes, testing security responses while also collecting valuable information about diplomatic activities. Agent Williams continued, "What makes this case particularly interesting is that your response exceeded their expectations. They apparently anticipated that local police would be confused by the diplomatic claims and would hesitate to take decisive action. Instead, you immediately recognized the inconsistencies and took appropriate steps to investigate." The realization that his actions had disrupted a sophisticated intelligence operation gave Marcus a sense of professional satisfaction, but he also felt concerned about the implications for international relations. What happens next? Marcus asked. Ambassador Larson smiled for the first time since his arrival. Officer Rodriguez, I believe you're about to learn that sometimes doing your job exceptionally well can lead to unexpected recognition from some very high places. The next morning brought developments that Marcus could never have anticipated. He arrived at the police station expecting to continue working on the case with federal agents, but instead found his supervisor, Captain Johnson, waiting for him, with an expression that mixed excitement and bewilderment. "Rodriguez, I need you to come to my office immediately," Captain Johnson said. "We've received some very unusual communications overnight, and they all concern your actions yesterday." In the captain's office, Marcus discovered Ambassador Larson waiting alongside two individuals he didn't recognize. One was a woman in her 40s wearing a business suit that screamed federal government, and the other was a younger man in an expensive suit who had the bearing of someone accustomed to luxury and authority. "Officer Rodriguez," Ambassador Larson said, rising from his chair, "I'd like you to meet Deputy Director Sarah Mitchell from the State Department's Diplomatic Security Service, and this is Prince Alexander of Aldoria." Marcus felt his professional composure falter for a moment. He had been investigating a case involving this prince for the past day, but he had never expected to meet him in person. Prince Alexander appeared to be in his early 30s, with dark hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in every detail of his surroundings. "Officer Rodriguez," the prince said, extending his hand, "I understand I owe you a considerable debt of gratitude." Deputy Director Mitchell took control of the conversation before Marcus could respond. "Officer Rodriguez, your actions yesterday disrupted what we now know was a sophisticated foreign intelligence operation. The individuals who hired those security contractors were working for a hostile foreign government that was attempting to gather detailed intelligence about Prince Alexander's diplomatic mission." Marcus was still processing the presence of royalty in his captain's office when the prince spoke again. "Officer Rodriguez, may I ask what first made you suspicious about the men claiming to be my guards?" Their documentation looked professional, but there were small details that didn't seem right, Marcus replied, finding his professional voice. The seals appeared to be printed rather than embossed, and there were grammatical errors that seemed unusual for official diplomatic papers. But mostly it was their behavior. They were trying too hard to look official. Prince Alexander nodded with apparent interest. "You have excellent instincts. Those contractors were provided with very sophisticated fake credentials that have fooled security professionals in other cities. The fact that you saw through them immediately is remarkable." Deputy Director Mitchell opened a folder and spread several documents across Captain Johnson's desk. "Officer Rodriguez, what you uncovered yesterday has implications that extend far beyond our borders. The intelligence network behind this operation has been targeting diplomatic meetings across North America and Europe. The security contractors you detained have provided us with information that has helped us identify and arrest 3 foreign agents who were coordinating these operations from a base in Montreal," Ambassador Larson added. Marcus realized that his routine police work had somehow contributed to an international law enforcement success. "I was just doing my job. When something doesn't look right, you investigate." Prince Alexander smiled. "That's exactly the kind of attitude that makes the difference between successful security and dangerous failures. Officer Rodriguez, I have a question for you. How would you feel about an opportunity to apply your skills in a different environment?" Before Marcus could ask what the prince meant, Deputy Director Mitchell explained. "The State Department's Diplomatic Security Service is always looking for officers with your combination of instincts, training, and integrity. We'd like to offer you an opportunity to undergo specialized training for international diplomatic security work." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the sudden turn his career was taking. "I appreciate the offer, but I need to understand what that would involve." "You would receive training in international law, diplomatic protocol, and advanced security techniques," Deputy Director Mitchell explained. "After completing the program, you would be assigned to provide security for diplomatic missions, foreign dignitaries, and sensitive international meetings," Prince Alexander interjected. "Officer Rodriguez, I have a more immediate proposition. My government is hosting an international security conference in Aldoria next month. We would be honored if you would attend as our guest and share your experience with security professionals from around the world." Captain Johnson, who had been quietly observing the conversation, finally spoke up. "Rodriguez, This is an incredible opportunity. The department would fully support your participation in either program. Marcus was trying to process these unexpected opportunities when Ambassador Larson added another surprising element to the conversation. Officer Rodriguez, there's something else you should know. Your actions yesterday didn't just disrupt an intelligence operation. They also saved Prince Alexander from a potentially dangerous situation. What do you mean? Marcus asked. Deputy Director Mitchell explained, the foreign agents who hired those security contractors weren't just gathering intelligence. They were also planning to use the contractors' access to the hotel to plant surveillance equipment in areas where Prince Alexander would be conducting sensitive meetings. More concerning, Prince Alexander added, we've discovered that they had also obtained detailed information about my schedule and planned routes through the city. There are indications that they were planning some kind of direct action against me or my delegation. Marcus felt the weight of these revelations. His decision to investigate suspicious activity at a hotel had apparently prevented not just espionage, but potentially an attack on a foreign dignitary on American soil. The implications of such an incident would have been severe for relations between our countries and for international security cooperation in general, Ambassador Larson said. Deputy Director Mitchell opened another folder and produced what appeared to be an official commendation letter. Officer Rodriguez, the Secretary of State has asked me to present you with this letter of appreciation for your service to international security and diplomatic relations. As Marcus read the formal letter praising his exceptional vigilance and professional competence in protecting foreign diplomatic personnel, he realized that his life had changed dramatically in the space of 24 hours. Prince Alexander stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. Officer Rodriguez, I want you to understand something important. In my position, I meet many security professionals from around the world. Most of them are competent and dedicated, but few have the combination of instincts and integrity that you demonstrated yesterday. The prince turned back to face Marcus. That's why I want to make you an offer that goes beyond the opportunities that Deputy Director Mitchell has described. Marcus waited, wondering what other surprises this conversation might hold. I would like to offer you a position as head of personal security for my family. It would involve relocating to Aldoria, but it would also provide you with opportunities to work at the highest levels of international security and diplomacy. The room fell silent as everyone waited for Marcus's response to an offer that would completely change his life and career trajectory. Marcus stared at Prince Alexander, struggling to process the magnitude of the offer he had just received. The idea of leaving his life in America to work for a foreign royal family was both exciting and terrifying. Before he could formulate a response, his phone buzzed with an urgent text message from his wife, Maria. Honey, there are news trucks outside our house. What's going on? The reality of his situation began to sink in as Marcus realized that his involvement in this case had attracted media attention. Captain Johnson noticed his concern and immediately made a phone call to ensure that Marcus's family would be protected from unwanted media intrusion. Officer Rodriguez, Deputy Director Mitchell said, I understand this is a lot to process. You don't need to make any decisions immediately. Take some time to discuss these opportunities with your family. Prince Alexander nodded in agreement. Absolutely. Such a decision should not be made hastily. However, I hope you'll consider joining us for the security conference in Aldoria. It would give you an opportunity to see our country and meet the people you would potentially be working with. Over the following weeks, Marcus found himself dealing with a level of attention he had never experienced. Local media celebrated him as a hero who had protected international relations, while national security experts praised his instincts and professionalism. The story of the SWAT officer who uncovered an international espionage plot became a favorite topic for news commentators and security analysts. However, the most significant conversations were happening at home. Marcus and his wife Maria spent hours discussing the opportunities that had been presented to them. Maria worked as a nurse at the city's main hospital and had deep roots in the community, but she was also intrigued by the possibility of experiencing life in a different country. "The prince seems sincere," Maria said during one of their many conversations about the future. "And the security conference would give us a chance to see what life might be like there before making any permanent decisions." Their teenage daughter, Sophia, was initially resistant to the idea of leaving her friends and school, but she became more interested when she learned that Aldoria had excellent universities and that the royal family would provide full educational support for employees' children. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his regular duties with the SWAT team while also participating in debriefing sessions with federal agents. The investigation into the espionage network had expanded internationally, and Marcus's initial observations had become crucial evidence in prosecuting the foreign agents who had been arrested. Agent Patricia Williams from the FBI kept Marcus informed about the broader implications of the case. "The intelligence we gathered from those fake security contractors has helped us identify similar operations in 6 other countries. Your actions didn't just prevent one incident, they helped shut down an entire network." 3 weeks after the initial confrontation at the Grand Palace Hotel, Marcus received a call from Ambassador Larson with news that would influence his decision-making process. "Officer Rodriguez, I wanted to inform you that the foreign government responsible for the espionage operation has made formal complaints about your interference with their activities," the ambassador said. Marcus felt a chill of concern. "What kind of complaints?" "They're claiming that you violated diplomatic protocols and interfered with legitimate security operations," Ambassador Larson explained. "Of course, these complaints have no merit, but they indicate that hostile foreign governments now see you as someone who poses a threat to their operations." The implication was clear. Marcus had made enemies in the international intelligence community, and his safety could potentially be at risk if he remained in his current position. "Ambassador, are you saying I might be in danger?" "Not immediately, but it's something to consider for the long term. Working under the protection of a friendly foreign government might actually be safer for you and your family than remaining in a local law enforcement position." This conversation added a new dimension to Marcus's decision-making process. What had started as an exciting career opportunity was now also a matter of personal security. When Marcus shared this information with Maria, her perspective on the situation changed significantly. "If staying here might put our family at risk, then we need to seriously consider all our options," she said. The decision became easier when Prince Alexander called personally to extend the invitation to the security conference to Marcus's entire family. "I would like Maria and Sophia to see our country as well. If you're going to consider joining us, they should have the opportunity to evaluate whether Aldoria would be a good home for your family." A week later, Marcus found himself boarding a private jet with his family, bound for a country he had barely heard of a month earlier. The aircraft was luxurious beyond anything he had experienced, with comfortable seating, excellent food, and a level of service that made the 8-hour flight feel much shorter. As they approached Aldoria, Marcus looked out the window at a landscape that seemed to combine the best features of Switzerland and Ireland. Rolling green hills were dotted with picturesque villages, while snow-capped mountains provided a dramatic backdrop. The capital city, where they would be staying, appeared to be a harmonious blend of historic architecture and modern development. Prince Alexander met them personally at the airport, along with a small entourage of officials and security personnel. Marcus was struck by how different the prince seemed in his own country. Here, he was clearly comfortable and confident in a way that had been less obvious during their meeting in America. "Welcome to Aldoria," the prince said warmly as they descended from the aircraft. "I hope your flight was comfortable. We have prepared accommodations for you at the palace, and tomorrow you'll have the opportunity to tour our security facilities and meet some of our team." The drive from the airport to the palace took them through countryside that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale. Ancient castles stood on hilltops, while modern wind farms generated clean energy from coastal breezes. The cities they passed appeared prosperous and well-maintained, with citizens who looked healthy and content. Maria squeezed Marcus's hand as they approached the palace. "It's beautiful here," she whispered. "I can see why people would want to live in a place like this." The palace itself was impressive but not overwhelming. Unlike the massive, imposing structures Marcus had seen in movies, this palace seemed designed for actual living rather than just ceremony. It was elegant and comfortable, with modern amenities integrated seamlessly into historic architecture. That evening, over dinner with Prince Alexander and his family, Marcus began to understand the culture and values of the country he was considering making his new home. The conversation was relaxed and informal, focusing on family, education, and community rather than politics or international relations. Officer Rodriguez, the prince's wife, Princess Isabella, said, "Alexander has told me so much about your character and instincts. We believe that people like you are exactly what our security services need to stay effective in an increasingly complex world." As the evening concluded, Marcus realized that his decision was becoming clearer. Aldoria seemed to offer not just a career opportunity, but a chance for his family to experience a different way of life that valued security, community, and personal growth. The next day would bring the security conference and his first real look at what his new career might involve. The International Security Conference exceeded all of Marcus's expectations. Held in a modern conference center adjacent to the palace, it brought together security professionals from over 30 countries. Marcus found himself presenting his experience with the fake royal guards to an audience of intelligence officers, diplomatic security specialists, and law enforcement leaders from around the world. What surprised Marcus most was how his story resonated with the international audience. During the question and answer session following his presentation, several attendees shared similar experiences with sophisticated deception operations in their own countries. "Officer Rodriguez," said Colonel Martinez from Spain's Guardia Civil, "your case demonstrates something we've been seeing across Europe. These intelligence networks are becoming increasingly sophisticated in their ability to exploit our assumptions about diplomatic protocol." Inspector Thompson from Scotland Yard added, "The psychological aspects of your case are particularly interesting. These operators understood that most security personnel would be reluctant to challenge individuals claiming diplomatic status, especially when they appear professional and well-prepared." Marcus realized that his instincts at the Grand Palace Hotel had been based on principles that applied universally, regardless of cultural or national differences. The ability to recognize when something doesn't feel right, despite surface appearances, was valued by security professionals everywhere. During a break between sessions, Prince Alexander introduced Marcus to General Patricia Hoffman, the former head of security for the United Nations. General Hoffman was now working as a private consultant, helping governments improve their security capabilities. "Officer Rodriguez, your case study should be part of training programs worldwide," General Hoffman said. "Too often, security personnel are trained to follow protocols without developing the critical thinking skills necessary to recognize when those protocols are being exploited against them." The conversation gave Marcus insight into how his experience could contribute to security training beyond just his potential role with the Aldorian royal family. The skills he had developed through years of police work had applications that he had never considered. On the second day of the conference, Marcus participated in practical exercises designed to test various security scenarios. Working alongside international colleagues, he found that his background in SWAT operations gave him a unique perspective on threat assessment and response coordination. During one exercise simulating a security breach at a diplomatic facility, Marcus's team was able to identify and neutralize the threat faster than any other group. His approach, which emphasized rapid information gathering and flexible response strategies, impressed both his teammates and the exercise observers. "Marcus," said Captain Eriksson from the Swedish Royal Guard, "you have an intuitive understanding of how threats develop and evolve. That's not something that can be taught easily. It comes from experience and natural ability. That evening, Prince Alexander hosted a private dinner for Marcus and his family, along with several key members of the Aldorian security establishment. The conversation focused on Marcus's impressions of the conference and his thoughts about the security challenges facing modern democracies. "What strikes me most," Marcus said, "is how interconnected these threats have become. The operation that I disrupted in my city was part of a network that was active across multiple continents. No single country can address these challenges alone." Princess Isabella, who had been quietly listening to the conversation, spoke up. "That's exactly why we believe international cooperation is so important. Marcus, your experience demonstrates how local law enforcement officers can play crucial roles in protecting global security." Sophia, Marcus's daughter, had been exploring the palace and grounds during the conference. At dinner, she shared her impressions of Aldoria with enthusiasm that surprised her parents. "Mom, Dad, the educational system here is incredible," Sophia said. "I spent today with some kids my age, and they're learning things I won't see in school for another 2 years. Plus, everyone speaks at least 3 languages." Maria had been visiting with Princess Isabella and other family members of the security team. "The community here feels very supportive," she told Marcus. "The families look out for each other in ways I don't see back home." As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself asking more detailed questions about what his life would be, like if he accepted the prince's offer. The responses painted a picture of a career that would be challenging and rewarding, with opportunities for continued learning and professional growth. "Marcus," Prince Alexander said, "I want you to understand that this position would not require you to abandon your American citizenship or your connections to your home country. We see this as an opportunity for cultural and professional exchange that benefits everyone involved." The prince continued, "In fact, we would expect you to maintain relationships with American law enforcement and security agencies. Your insights into American methods and perspectives would be valuable for our ongoing international cooperation efforts." On the final day of the conference, Marcus was approached by Deputy Director Mitchell from the State Department, who had traveled to Aldoria, specifically to speak with him. "Officer Rodriguez, I want to make sure you understand that accepting this position would actually enhance your value to American security interests," she said. "Having someone with your background and integrity working closely with allied governments provides benefits that extend far beyond personal career opportunities." This conversation helped Marcus realize that his decision wasn't just about choosing between 2 career paths. It was about choosing how he could best contribute to international security and cooperation. That afternoon, Marcus and his family took a private walk through the palace gardens with Prince Alexander and his family. The setting was peaceful and beautiful, with carefully maintained flower beds and walking paths that offered views of the surrounding mountains. "Alexander," Marcus said, using the prince's first name for the first time, "I need to ask you directly, why is this position so important to you? You could hire experienced security professionals from anywhere in the world." Prince Alexander stopped walking and turned to face Marcus directly. "Because most experienced security professionals bring assumptions and preconceptions that can limit their effectiveness. You've demonstrated the ability to see clearly through deception and to act decisively based on what you observe rather than what you're told to expect." The prince continued, "In today's world, threats come from unexpected directions and take forms that traditional security training doesn't always prepare us for. We need people who can think independently and trust their instincts." As they reached a hilltop pavilion overlooking the capital city, Prince Alexander made one final point that would influence Marcus's decision. "Marcus, 6 months ago, my family's security was breached by individuals who had passed every background check and met every qualification we thought we needed. They were stopped only because a junior guard noticed something that didn't feel right and had the courage to act on his instincts. That incident taught us that technical qualifications and experience are important, but they're not enough. We need people who combine professional competence with the kind of intuitive judgment you demonstrated at the Grand Palace Hotel. That evening, as Marcus sat with Maria and Sophia on the balcony of their palace suite, looking out over a country that could become their new home, he realized that his decision had already been made. "I think we should do this," Maria said quietly. "It feels like the right next step for our family." Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "Dad, this could be the adventure we never knew we wanted." Marcus smiled as he looked at his family and then at the peaceful, prosperous country spread out below them. The confrontation with fake royal guards that had started this entire journey had led them to opportunities and experiences they could never have imagined. The next morning, Marcus formally accepted Prince Alexander's offer, beginning a new chapter in his life that would combine his law enforcement background with international diplomacy and security. The palace's reaction to his decision was one of genuine celebration, as if they were welcoming not just a new employee, but a new member of their extended family. 6 months later, Marcus would reflect on how a routine response to suspicious activity had transformed not just his career, but his entire worldview about service, security, and the interconnected nature of modern global challenges.